Poverty is still a massive global issue. Imagine you're trying to help tackle it. What evidence should you rely on to choose what to do? Well, first, what do we mean by poverty? In the USA, the poverty line is about $30 a day, which would be really hard to live off. According to these graphs from Our World in Data, if we use that poverty line around the world, then about 84% of people live below that poverty line worldwide. That's 6.7 billion people. You might not think that's so bad because maybe $30 goes further overseas, but that's not how these numbers are calculated. When they make comparisons across countries, they account for what's called purchasing power. Basically, they control for the fact that stuff can be cheaper in low-income countries. So when we say people live below $30 a day, we mean they live below what people in the USA can buy for $30. There's another line people talk about called the extreme poverty line, which is where people live on less than $2.15 a day, less than one loaf of bread. No other food, no new clothes, electricity or rent. As a globe, we've lifted about 1 billion people above this line over the last 20 years, but there's still a huge amount left to do. Over 600 million people still live below this line. For people in sub-Saharan Africa, it's 1 in 3 people. So poverty is a huge problem, but there are lots of funded programs to try and fix it. What programs should we fund? How should we best help those living off so little money?
Maybe we could give them money?
What, you mean like a loan?
No, just like give it to them.
Nah, that wouldn't work. You give a man a fish, they eat for a day. You teach a man a fish, they eat for their whole life.
But he can't afford a fishing line or a boat. And how do you know he doesn't know how to fish already?
It's a metaphor.
Your metaphor sounds fishy.
What if they spend it on alcohol or cigarettes?
You're worried he'd do that before, a roof or food or water or medicine or something to start a business like a motorbike.
Okay, kids, settle down. How do we resolve this?
We could just test it, like run a study, get a bunch of people, half of them get cash, half of them get the workforce training program or fishing lessons, whatever you call it, just see what happens.
Okay, that's a good idea. The US government actually did that study. They found across a whole range of metrics, cash did better than the workplace training.
Yeah, fine, whatever, but how do I know you're not going to cheat when you do the study?
Cheat at science.
Yeah, like if you ran the study, you'd have a conflict of interest. You'd put your thumb on the scales to get the result that you want. Tell the participants, oh, if you want more cash, you better say this works.
Yeah, okay, that's fair. Conflicts of interest are a thing. What if we didn't tell the participants what we were looking for? Or you and I agreed on some independent third party that just does the study for us?
Yeah, you'd probably run 10 studies and report the one that happened to be significant. Or measure like 10 things and just report the one that happened to change. Oh yeah, we always thought mental health was going to be the thing that got better.
Yeah, okay, I know that happens too. It's publication bias. People don't publish the studies that don't confirm what they want, or they bury the findings that don't support what they want. What if we put it online beforehand, exactly what we were going to do, what our primary outcome was, what do they call it, but pre-registration?
Well, you expect me to trust a single study? You can find one study that says anything.
Yeah, so what if we did a few? You want like more than 10 studies.
Yeah.
And we pulled them together to make a decision.
Yeah.
Like these systematic reviews.
Yeah. Wait, what?
Systematic reviews are designed to be trustworthy literature reviews. They aim to find every study on a specific topic, like do cash transfers improve well-being? They're systematic because they have a transparent method that other people could reproduce. This is different from a normal literature review because those reviews can just cherry-pick the evidence that supports their case. As a result, systematic reviews are more trustworthy than typical literature reviews. In this case, you might do a systematic review of all experiments that use cash transfers and measured well-being. These reviews are designed to find everything and summarize what it all says. You can see in this one, they found 45 studies on cash transfers, which measured well-being or mental health. Together, the studies had over 100,000 people. Systematic reviews like these usually summarize the studies they find using what's called a meta-analysis. This is basically an average effect of all the included studies. It's weighted by how big the studies are because bigger studies tend to be more precise. Here's how it works. The expected effect size is the point in the middle. These lines are the uncertainty, usually the 95% confidence interval. We're pretty sure the real effect is in this range. Since that range includes 0, we say there's no significant effect of cash on well-being.
See?
Okay, hold on, handsome. this was one of the smallest effects. At the other end, we can see some studies with much bigger effects. But notice how these lines are really long? That's because this study is smaller than the first one. Still, because the lines showing the 95% confidence interval don't include 0, this study says cash has a significant effect on well-being.
Yeah, but why would you trust the smaller study?
In a meta-analysis, we don't cherry-pick any one of the individual studies like this. We put all the studies together to calculate a pooled effect size. It's still a bit hard to see the overall effect, so you take a special type of weighted average. You can see down here that the average of all of these studies is this diamond. Because we're comparing so many studies, each with about 1,000 participants, the confidence interval is much narrower. We can be much more confident that we know the effect size when we pool all the evidence together like this. Good systematic reviews also ask questions like, when does the intervention work best? Using what's called moderation analyses. Moderation analyses for cash might ask, does more money lead to bigger effects? You can see in this graph that the more money people get, the bigger the effects for their well-being. They can also do what's called sensitivity analyses, which ask, say, is this effect still here once I only include the best studies? This is important because you can do a meta-analysis on basically any type of study. As shown here by the World Health Organization, if we want to know how well things work, we could use a few case studies. For cash transfers, there are thousands of case studies on the Give Directly website, which is a charity giving cash to the world's poorest. Here's Wanaka, a mum whose house got destroyed in a landslide. She used the cash to buy a house and send her daughter to school. But this isn't great evidence because we don't know if this was true of everyone who got the money. Cohort studies take a big group of people, give them all cash, and try to follow up with them later. This is better, but we still don't know how people would have gone without the cash. In quasi-experiments, you get a control group who doesn't get any cash, but you don't randomize them. You might pick a bunch of similar nearby villages to compare them against. This is better still, but there might be differences between the groups that you didn't consider. Maybe the villages were different beforehand. The best single experiment we can do is a randomized trial because randomization helps us ensure that the cash and no cash groups are as similar as possible. You get a bunch of people or a bunch of villages and randomize them to treatment or control, cash or no cash. So a systematic review pulls all types of studies, but you can do a systematic review at any of these levels. So a systematic review of randomized trials is the best because you're taking the best evidence from the best experiments and pulling it all together. That review of cash for well-being include both randomized trials and the quasi-experiments because sometimes it's harder to get people to sign up for a study and say, you might or might not get any money. They did a sensitivity analysis to see if this mattered. As you can see, the effect sizes are basically the same for the randomized controlled trials and the quasi-experiments.
So I've got a systematic review of 19 studies saying that cash did not increase alcohol or tobacco use. This one of 7 randomized trials saying cash does not discourage work. This one found it increased work and productivity. This review of cash transfers had like 1 million people in the studies. It found cash increased health, food security, likelihood of attending school.
Okay, I get it. Don't teach a woman to fish. Give her the money and let her buy what she wants, even if it's fishing lessons.
The moral of this story isn't just to give cash. Cash is a good benchmark for interventions to beat because it's so simple and the evidence is so good. But the real moral of this story is that we should use the best evidence we can find to figure out what works. The best evidence is the stuff at the top of this evidence hierarchy. One step above systematic reviews are network meta-analyses and umbrella reviews or evidence centers. Systematic reviews usually try to test one intervention. But network meta-analyses and umbrella reviews try to compare all of the interventions against each other. How does giving cash compare against giving malarial bed nets or giving vitamin A supplements? The What Works centres in the UK are great examples of how evidence centres can cover everything from healthcare to education, crime and homelessness. These evidence centres try to compare all the solutions for a particular problem and recommend which ones are likely to be most effective. Research like this isn't the only thing you should use to inform your decision. First, none of this evidence is bulletproof. Systematic reviews of imperfect studies will still give you imperfect conclusions. They tell you what works on average, but maybe not in your specific case. So in medicine and policy, good decision-making involves the best evidence, expert judgment, and the values and preferences of those we're trying to help. We also don't have randomized controlled trials or systematic reviews for everything. We can't do randomized experiments to stop nuclear war. We also don't need randomized experiments for parachutes.
Half of you have parachutes, half of you do not! Why? For science!
Damn control conditions.
But for so many problems, we have arguments when we could have evidence. So often there is good evidence that helps us make better decisions. As mere mortals, you and I can't find all of that ourselves. So by starting out at the best evidence and working our way down, we can more quickly figure out what works. We have so much knowledge at our fingertips. We can learn to find the truth, as long as we know where to look.